Speak the truth or pay the price. It sounds harsh, but the reality behind this idea is deeply human and timeless. Every time we avoid the truth, whether through lies, omissions, or silence, we trade short-term comfort for long-term chaos. The truth can be uncomfortable, it can be inconvenient, but what's even more uncomfortable is living a life built on falsehoods, where trust crumbles, integrity dissolves, and meaning becomes impossible to find. Honest speech isn't just about not lying, it's about aligning your words with reality. When you speak truthfully, you give form to clarity, to your values, to your intentions, to your understanding of the world. And when you refuse to do that, the price you pay isn't always immediate, but it's guaranteed. It builds slowly, invisibly, until one day you look around and realize you're living in a house of cards. A single breath of truth can bring it all crashing down. There's a reason people are tempted to lie. It's easier. It buys time, shields us from confrontation, spares someone's feelings, or preserves an illusion we're not ready to break. But what is easy in the moment often becomes heavy in the long run. Lies multiply. You need more of them to protect the first one. Soon, you're not just deceiving others, you're deceiving yourself. You no longer know where the truth ends and the performance begins. Honest speech is a form of courage. It demands we stand up, even when our voice shakes. It asks us to risk offending, to risk rejection, to risk loss. But the reward is far greater. When you speak the truth, people may not always like what you say, but they will know where you stand. They will see the core of your character. And that creates something powerful: trust. Real, grounded, durable trust. In relationships, in work, in society, everything worthwhile is built on that foundation. If we want families that flourish, communities that function, and nations that endure, we need honesty. Not brutality, not cruelty, but honest engagement with reality. It's not just a moral ideal, it's a psychological necessity. Because if you don't speak the truth, you betray yourself. You bury what you really think, and you drift further and further from who you really are. That's the ultimate price. So speak the truth, not because it's easy, but because it's right. Because the alternative is to pay with your peace, your authenticity, and eventually your soul. Avoiding the truth might feel like a clever escape in the moment. When we're cornered by difficult questions, tough conversations, or emotionally charged situations, lying or remaining silent can feel like a relief. It's the path of least resistance. It allows us to dodge confrontation, keep the peace temporarily, and avoid discomfort. But this kind of short-term thinking rarely takes into account what it truly costs us over time. The truth has a weight to it. And when it's ignored or avoided, that weight doesn't vanish, it builds. It settles into the background of our lives, growing heavier with every unspoken word, every dishonest reply, every moment we choose comfort over clarity. One of the most insidious effects of avoiding the truth is that it creates a false sense of stability. At first glance, everything seems fine. No arguments erupt, no consequences surface immediately. Life rolls on, seemingly uninterrupted. But underneath that appearance, cracks begin to form. A lie, even a small one, is not an isolated event. It creates a ripple effect. It demands protection. It calls for follow-up lies, altered behavior, and selective memory. Before long, you've constructed an alternate version of events, not only for others, but often for yourself. This distortion becomes dangerous when it begins to affect your sense of reality. People who chronically avoid the truth lose track of what's real. They become entangled in narratives designed to keep them safe, accepted, or in control. But safety built on a lie is fragile. Acceptance earned through a mask is not real acceptance. Control achieved by distortion is unstable. Eventually, life has a way of catching up. The truth has a persistence that lies cannot match. It doesn't go away just because it's inconvenient. It waits. And when it surfaces, as it always does, the fallout is almost always greater than if it had been faced in the beginning. There is also a psychological toll. Carrying lies, omissions, or pretenses creates cognitive dissonance. It places the mind in a state of internal contradiction, knowing one thing, saying another, living as if both are true. This tension can't be maintained forever without consequences. It breeds anxiety, stress, guilt, and a sense of inner fragmentation. Over time, it erodes mental clarity and emotional resilience. The person becomes defensive, uncertain, and often deeply insecure because somewhere inside they know the truth has been abandoned, and that knowledge becomes a constant source of unease. In relationships, avoiding the truth is a slow poison. Honesty is the foundation of trust, and without trust, no relationship, romantic, familial, professional, or social, can truly thrive. When people sense dishonesty, even if they can't quite identify it, it creates distance. Communication becomes cautious, vulnerability disappears, resentment builds, and when the truth eventually surfaces, as it so often does, the damage can be profound. People feel betrayed not just by the lie itself, but by the time spent believing something false, building something on shaky ground. The cost is even steeper when avoidance of truth becomes habitual. What starts as a protective strategy becomes a personality trait. The person becomes known as someone who can't be relied on, who bends the truth, who hides from difficult conversations. This reputation, once earned, is hard to shake. It follows them from one context to another. It limits opportunities, erodes respect, and isolates them from meaningful connection. No one wants to build their life with someone who is not anchored in truth. Avoiding the truth also keeps people stuck. When you're not honest about your problems, your feelings, or your failures, you deny yourself the chance to grow. You pretend things are fine when they're not. You stay in bad situations because acknowledging the truth would force a decision, a change, or a confrontation you're not ready for. But growth is only possible through honest appraisal. You can't fix what you won't admit is broken. You can't heal from what you pretend isn't hurting. Truth is the doorway to improvement. Without it, you remain in a cycle of avoidance and stagnation. There's a cultural impact as well. A society where people routinely avoid the truth becomes dysfunctional, institutions lose credibility, dialogue becomes shallow, people stop trusting each other, cynicism replaces sincerity, and progress slows because no real problem can be addressed without first being honestly named. When the norm becomes say what's easiest, the collective ability to solve problems is crippled. All of this points to a simple reality. The truth, however uncomfortable, is always less costly than the long-term price of avoidance. Lies may delay consequences, but they never eliminate them. In fact, they almost always make them worse. And while honesty may bring short-term conflict or discomfort, it also brings clarity. It lays the foundation for resolution, integrity, and peace, not just with others, but within yourself. Truth aligns speech with reality in a way that nothing else can. When we speak honestly, we participate in something deeper than just exchanging information. We engage with the world as it actually is, not as we wish it were or as we fear it might be. Language is one of the most powerful tools humans possess. It shapes perception, constructs relationships, and builds the frameworks through which we understand life. When that tool is used dishonestly, we don't just mislead others, we distort reality itself. But when it's used truthfully, we bring order and clarity to both our internal experience and our external environment. Speaking the truth is not only about being factually accurate, it's about expressing what you genuinely think, see, feel, and believe, even when it's difficult. It means aligning your words with your inner perception and with the external reality around you. That's why truth is not just a moral issue, it's a structural one. It forms the foundation of sanity. To tell the truth is to attempt to say what is, to bring your understanding into harmony with the actual state of the world. When your speech reflects reality, it has power. People recognize it, they respond to it. Even if they disagree with your perspective, they sense the integrity behind your words. There is a kind of resonance in honest speech, a weight, a clarity, an authority that cannot be faked. This is especially crucial in moments of difficulty, where the temptation to lie or soften the edges of reality is strongest. Yet it's in these very moments that honest speech becomes most transformative. It cuts through confusion. It clears the fog. It allows others to orient themselves, to make decisions based on what's actually true rather than what is comfortable. Truthful speech is also essential for self-respect. When you speak what you really believe, you affirm your own voice. You stop outsourcing your reality to others and take ownership of your thoughts and observations. This builds strength from within. You begin to trust yourself, not because you're always right, but because you're committed to being real. You know that your words are not calculated performances, but sincere efforts to describe the world as you understand it. That's the foundation of authenticity, and authenticity is something people instinctively recognize and value. Without truth, everything becomes shaky. If your words don't match reality, you're essentially navigating the world with a faulty map. You make decisions based on illusion. You get lost. Worse, you lead others astray. Whether you're giving advice, offering feedback, making a promise, or sharing your perspective, if it's not grounded in reality, it causes harm. Sometimes subtle, sometimes catastrophic. Misalignment between speech and reality always produces friction. It creates misunderstanding, confusion, and broken trust. Over time, that friction wears down relationships, reputations, and even your own sense of direction. Consider the alternative: living in a state of constant performance, saying what you think others want to hear, avoiding difficult truths because they might upset someone, pretending to be okay when you're not, agreeing when you actually disagree. That might preserve harmony on the surface, but underneath, it breeds resentment, confusion, and disconnection. You begin to disappear into the roles you play. You become what others expect rather than who you truly are. And eventually you lose track of the line between real and fake. Your words no longer represent your thoughts. They become strategies for approval or avoidance. That's not communication, that's manipulation. But when your speech is aligned with truth, it restores integrity. It simplifies life. You don't have to remember what you said last time or manage a web of contradictions. You can stand by your words because they came from a place of sincerity. And you can change your mind honestly too, because truth is not about being rigid or infallible. It's about being in honest dialogue with reality, open to correction, willing to revise your views as you learn more. That openness, combined with a commitment to speak truthfully, creates the conditions for real growth. Truthful speech doesn't mean saying everything you think all the time without filter. It doesn't mean being harsh, cruel, or inconsiderate. It means striving to be accurate, sincere, and meaningful in what you say. It means choosing words that aim at truth rather than convenience, manipulation, or escape. This kind of speech creates stronger relationships because it builds trust. People know where they stand with you. They don't have to second guess your intentions or read between the lines. And in a world where so many conversations are clouded by half-truths and performance, that kind of clarity is rare and invaluable. In the end, truthful speech is not just about morality, it's about survival. It's how we stay grounded, it's how we orient ourselves in the chaos of existence, it's how we build anything that lasts. When you speak the truth, you act as a bridge between your inner world and the external one, anchoring both in something solid. And the more you do it, the stronger that bridge becomes. Lying leads to self-deception, and this is one of the most dangerous outcomes of avoiding truth. Most people think of lies as something directed outward, something we tell to deceive others. But what often goes unnoticed is how every lie also ricochets inward. Over time, the act of lying doesn't just manipulate the outside world, it begins to distort your inner world too. You start to believe your own fabrications, or at the very least, you begin to forget where the truth ends and the falsehood begins. That confusion, if left unchecked, turns into a warped view of yourself, your relationships, and reality itself. It usually starts subtly. You tell a small lie to protect yourself, to avoid a fight, to look better in someone's eyes. You tell yourself it's no big deal, that it's harmless or necessary, and maybe it is in that moment, but once you've done it, you've set a precedent. You've told yourself, this is how I deal with discomfort, and the next time you're in a tight spot, that response is already familiar. The lie becomes easier, more automatic. You begin to rationalize it, to reshape your memory of events or even your perception of yourself in order to justify the untruth. What was once a conscious decision becomes a habit, and that habit becomes a lens through which you start to see the world. When you lie regularly, especially to avoid facing uncomfortable truths, your relationship with reality becomes unstable. You might lie about your abilities and then begin to overestimate what you're capable of. Or you might lie about your failures, blaming others or external factors, and slowly lose the capacity for self-reflection. You stop learning because you stop being honest with yourself about what you need to improve. You avoid feedback, avoid hard conversations, and avoid responsibility. And the longer you do that, the harder it becomes to break out of that illusion. You build a version of yourself on shaky ground, A self-deception weakens your internal structure. You become unsure of your instincts, your decisions, even your identity. That's the paradox of lying. It often begins as a way to protect your self-image, but over time, it dismantles the very sense of self it was meant to defend. Because if you're always pretending, always performing, who are you really? And what happens when the roles you play stop working? When they no longer get you what you want, or when others see through them? You're left exposed with no solid foundation to fall back on. There's also the emotional cost. Lying, especially when it becomes habitual, breeds anxiety. You're always wondering if you'll be caught, if you've contradicted yourself, if people are starting to notice. You have to track your stories, remember your performances, and constantly manage how others perceive you. That's exhausting. It eats away at your peace of mind. And even if no one else ever confronts you, you can't escape your own awareness. There's always a part of you that knows when you're being false. That part doesn't disappear, it just goes quiet, buried beneath the noise of denial and justification. But it continues to whisper, creating a low-level discomfort that never fully goes away. Self-deception also limits your relationships. True connection can only exist between authentic selves. When you lie to others, you deny them the chance to know who you really are. You offer them a version of yourself that's edited, curated, or entirely fictional. And if they accept that version, they're not really connecting with you. They're connecting with a mask. That makes intimacy impossible. Over time, this creates feelings of isolation, even in close relationships. You might be surrounded by people, but still feel unknown, unseen, misunderstood. Because in a way, you've hidden the truth of who you are behind a wall of self-deception. And even when someone tries to break through that wall, you might resist. Because by that point, your identity is tangled up in the lies. Telling the truth would mean unraveling too much. It would mean admitting to yourself and to others that you've been false, that you've been afraid, that you've made mistakes. That's a scary thing to face. But until you do, nothing can truly get better. You can't fix what you won't face. You can't heal what you refuse to acknowledge. And you can't grow if your foundation is based on pretending. The only way out of self-deception is through truth, not just spoken truth, but internal truth. Honest reflection, willingness to look at yourself without defensiveness. The courage to say, here's where I've gone wrong, here's what I've been avoiding, here's what I actually believe. It's not easy and it's rarely comfortable, but it is deeply freeing, because once you reconnect with what's real about yourself, your choices, your life, you can begin to rebuild. You can move forward with integrity, and you can begin to trust yourself again, not because you're perfect, but because you're honest. Honesty requires courage, plain and simple. It's not the easy path, and it's not always the safe one, at least not in the short term, but it's the path of strength. The kind of strength that builds over time and transforms who you are at the core. Telling the truth often means standing up even when everything inside you wants to sit down and stay quiet. It means risking discomfort, disapproval, conflict, and even rejection, just to remain aligned with what you know is real. That kind of courage isn't loud or flashy. It's quiet, steady, and deeply personal. It comes from a commitment to reality, even when reality is inconvenient, messy, or painful. Why does honesty require courage? Because truth challenges. It interrupts, it disturbs the status quo. In a world where people are often conditioned to say what others want to hear, to keep the peace, to maintain appearances, telling the truth can feel like an act of rebellion. When you speak honestly, you risk upsetting people, and most of us are raised to avoid conflict. We're taught to be agreeable, to smooth things over, to keep things light. But the truth doesn't always cooperate with that. It brings depth, tension, and seriousness when necessary. It can challenge people's beliefs, confront their behavior, or expose something they'd rather ignore. And when you do that, even kindly, you're likely to encounter resistance. Sometimes the person resisting the truth is you. That's often the first and hardest barrier. It takes courage to admit the truth to yourself before you ever speak it to anyone else. It means facing parts of yourself that you'd rather avoid, your regrets, your fears, your contradictions. It means acknowledging that you've been wrong, that you've failed, that you're not who you hope to be in certain moments. That internal confrontation is tough, but it's necessary. Without it, every word you speak will be clouded by avoidance. The courage to be honest with others starts with the courage to be honest within. Being honest also means accepting the consequences of your words. That's what makes it so difficult. Telling someone the truth might disappoint them. It might anger them. It might change the relationship. You could lose something: approval, comfort, reputation, even connection. But the key question becomes, is the connection real if it's based on falsehood? Is the approval meaningful if it's earned through performance? That's the test of courage, the willingness to trade surface-level safety for something deeper, something true. What people often discover, though, is that honesty, even when it causes short-term tension, builds long-term strength. Speaking the truth may create a difficult moment, but it lays a foundation of respect. Others may not always like what you say, but if they know you're being real with them, they're far more likely to trust you. That trust is not built on always being agreeable. It's built on consistency, sincerity, and the understanding that you mean what you say. And for you, the speaker, that trust reflects inward as well. You start to carry yourself differently when you know you're not hiding. You walk through the world with your back a little straighter, your mind a little clearer, because you're not carrying the weight of pretending. Courageous honesty doesn't mean being harsh or brutally direct. It doesn't mean using truth as an excuse to be unkind. There's a difference between honesty and cruelty. True honesty is guided by both truth and compassion. It means saying what needs to be said with respect, with care, and with a genuine intention to clarify or heal, not to harm. That balance takes maturity. It's not about winning an argument or proving a point. It's about honoring what's real, even if it's uncomfortable. That's what makes it courageous. It's not driven by ego, but by integrity. It also takes courage to be honest in a world that often rewards the opposite. In many environments, workplaces, schools, even families, people are subtly or openly encouraged to keep quiet, to go along, to avoid rocking the boat. Sometimes it's easier to conform, to nod along, to ignore the nagging feeling that something isn't right. But that kind of silence becomes a habit, and over time it turns into resentment, powerlessness, and disconnection. Speaking the truth, even in small doses, disrupts that pattern. It plants a flag. It says, I see what's real, and I won't pretend I don't. That's the heart of honest courage, the refusal to betray reality for the sake of temporary ease. It's the strength to speak when silence is the expected currency. It's the willingness to risk short-term discomfort for long-term peace. Because while honesty may cost you something in the moment, dishonesty will always cost you more in the long run: your clarity, your confidence, your ability to live in alignment with who you really are. So the courage to be honest isn't just a skill, it's a way of being. It shapes your character. It changes your relationships, and it becomes a guiding principle that steadies you through the complexities of life. When you commit to truth, even when it's hard, you become someone that others, and most importantly, you yourself, can depend on. Truth fosters trust, and trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, every functional community, every stable organization, and every society that hopes to thrive. Trust isn't built overnight. And it isn't built through charm, cleverness, or performance. It's built piece by piece through consistent honesty. When someone speaks the truth, even when it's difficult or inconvenient, they signal something deeply reassuring. They're dependable. They're anchored. They're not just saying what they think you want to hear, they're telling you what is. That kind of consistency creates a sense of safety, and safety is what allows connection to deepen. People can handle difficult truths more than we often give them credit for. What they can't handle is deception. When someone senses that you're being evasive, sugarcoating, or manipulating the facts, a subtle alarm goes off. They may not call you out directly, but they start to pull away. They question your motives. They become cautious with their own words. The relationship moves from open to guarded, from alive to strategic. And that shift, even if it's quiet, erodes the possibility of real closeness. Because trust doesn't thrive in ambiguity, it needs clarity, and clarity comes from truth. When you're honest with someone, you're not just offering them information, you're extending respect. You're saying, I trust you enough to handle what I really think, what I really feel, what I really know. That's a powerful gesture. It honors the other person's intelligence, maturity, and emotional strength. And even when your words are hard to hear, that respect often earns a deeper level of connection than any polished or diplomatic response ever could. People appreciate honesty not because it always feels good, but because it helps them understand where they stand and who you really are. This is just as true in professional life as it is in personal life. Whether you're leading a team, collaborating with colleagues, or building a brand, truth is essential. Leaders who are consistently honest, even about setbacks and failures, tend to be trusted more than those who try to maintain a perfect image. They show that they're human, that they're willing to be real, and that they're not playing games. That kind of transparency fosters loyalty, teamwork, and respect. On the other hand, when people sense that they're being misled, even slightly, trust collapses. And once trust is broken, it's incredibly difficult to repair. Trust built on truth has another important quality. It's stable. It doesn't require constant maintenance through spin, performance, or second guessing. When you're truthful, you don't have to keep track of lies. You don't have to remember which version of the story you told to whom. You don't have to manage impressions or backpedal when things change. You can simply be consistent because your words match your values, your beliefs, and your reality. That internal alignment creates confidence not only in others, but within yourself. You become more grounded, more present, more capable of navigating complex situations with clarity. Truth also deepens intimacy. In close relationships, friendships, partnerships, families, honesty is what allows two people to truly know each other. When you hide behind half-truths or silence, you deny others access to your real self. And if they connect with you based on that incomplete version, you're always going to feel unseen. But when you speak the truth, especially the vulnerable kind, you open a door, you allow yourself to be known. That's risky, yes, but it's also the only way to be truly loved. Because love that's not based on truth isn't really love, it's affection for a persona. Now, honesty doesn't mean speaking without tact or blurting out every thought that crosses your mind. Trust also requires wisdom. The goal isn't to use truth as a weapon, but to use it as a bridge. You can tell the truth kindly, you can speak with clarity and compassion, you can be direct without being cruel, and when people see that you're committed not just to being honest, but to being responsibly honest, trust deepens even further. They know you're not just interested in being right, you're interested in being real, and in doing so in a way that nurtures rather than harms. Another crucial point is that trust based on truth is resilient. It can handle storms. If you've built trust through consistent honesty, the occasional mistake doesn't break the whole structure. People who trust you will forgive errors because they believe in your character. They know that even when you fall short, you're not hiding. You're willing to take responsibility, to apologize, to grow. That's the strength of truth. It doesn't require perfection, only sincerity. And sincerity builds something much stronger than any facade ever could. In a world full of noise, sales pitches, and surface-level communication, truth is rare, and that rarity makes it incredibly valuable. When you speak truthfully, you stand out. You become someone others rely on, not because you're always agreeable, but because you're steady. They know that with you, what they see is what they get. And that kind of reliability is the foundation not just for strong relationships, but for a meaningful life. Truth is not just an ideal to aspire to, it is the very structure that holds up the world. When we speak honestly, we're not just expressing individual opinions, we are helping to sustain something much larger than ourselves, the integrity of human relationships, the reliability of communication, the shared understanding that makes cooperation and progress possible. Without truth, the systems we rely on, our families, our friendships, our governments, our economies, begin to crumble. They become chaotic, dysfunctional, and eventually collapse under the weight of deception and confusion. Every lie, no matter how small, is like a crack in that structure. And when lies multiply, the cracks spread until nothing stable is left. That's why speaking the truth is not just a personal virtue, it's a moral responsibility. It's how we do our part to hold reality together. It's how we honor the dignity of others by giving them the real facts, the real story, the real version of who we are. It's how we remain accountable not only to those around us, but to something higher, the truth itself, which exists independently of our preferences, our agendas, or our fears. Truth doesn't care about how we feel, it simply is. And when we align ourselves with it, when we speak it, act on it, and stand by it, we enter into a kind of sacred relationship with reality. We become trustworthy, we become strong, we become real. And this isn't just abstract philosophy. The consequences are tangible. When truth is spoken consistently, it creates order, it allows problems to be solved, injustices to be corrected, pain to be healed, and trust to be built. Even in the face of tremendous difficulty. Even when the truth is painful, it offers a path forward. It allows people to adapt, to prepare, to understand. Without truth, there is only manipulation, confusion, and ultimately betrayal. Think of the people you respect most in your life. Chances are, they're not the ones who always told you what you wanted to hear. They're the ones who told you what you needed to hear. The ones who were willing to speak the truth, even when it was uncomfortable. They were anchors in a world that sometimes felt unsteady. They helped you see more clearly, think more deeply, and grow more honestly. That is the power of truth. It transforms us, and those who live by it become beacons in the lives of others. But truth comes with a cost. Sometimes it isolates you. Sometimes it makes you unpopular. Sometimes it forces you to stand alone, to take responsibility, to confront uncomfortable realities. That's the price. But the alternative, living in falsehood, comes at a far greater cost. Because every time you choose to lie, you chip away at your integrity. You distance yourself from others. You lose a little of your voice, a little of your courage, a little of your soul. And in the end, the weight of all that silence and pretense becomes unbearable. So we must choose every day, every conversation, every moment when the truth rises in us and we're tempted to turn away. We must choose to speak, even if our voice shakes, even if the room goes quiet, even if the cost is high, because the cost of silence in the long run is always higher. To speak the truth is to accept the burden of honesty, but also the gift of clarity, the strength of self-respect, and the peace that comes from knowing you are living in alignment with what is real. Truth gives life meaning. It gives words weight. It gives relationships depth. And it gives you, the one who dares to speak it, a purpose far greater than comfort. So speak the truth or pay the price, not in punishment from others, but in the slow, quiet erosion of who you might have been had you chosen courage instead of comfort. Be the one who tells the truth when it matters. The world desperately needs more of that, and it always will.